The Curse of the Attic. In a quiet suburb of a small town in northern Maine stood an old dilapidated house. The locals avoided it, calling it the house with the cold attic. For decades, rumors swirled about the place, people disappearing, strange noises in the night, and an eerie cold that seemed to emanate from the attic itself. Those who dared venture upstairs either never returned or came back, changed. When a young family moved into the house, Emily and John Carter, along with their 9-year-old son Ben, the neighbors shook their heads in quiet disapproval. A few tried to warn them, but John dismissed the stories, saying, "Just superstitions and old wives' tales." The first night. It began with scratching. Late that night, Ben woke up to an odd sound, like claws scraping against wood. Sitting up in bed, he glanced around, straining to listen. The noise seemed to be coming from above. Then came a faint creak, followed by a thin, whispering voice. "Can you hear me?" Ben froze, his heart pounding, but convinced himself it was just a dream. He pulled the blankets over his head and forced himself to sleep. The mystery of the attic. The next day, Ben heard the sounds again, this time during daylight hours. It was faint, but it seemed like something moving around in the attic. That evening, in the glow of the streetlights outside, Ben noticed something odd. The attic window, which had been shut earlier, was now slightly ajar. Gathering his courage, he asked his father, "Dad, what's up in the attic?" "Nothing," John replied. "We haven't even gone up there. Probably just dust and some old junk left by the previous owners." But Ben wasn't so sure. The door that calls. On the third night, Ben couldn't take it anymore. The sounds had grown louder, scratching, tapping, and then the soft creak of the attic door. Then he heard it again. "Help me, please." Ben grabbed his flashlight and crept out of bed, his heart hammering in his chest. He tiptoed to the staircase leading to the attic. The door at the top of the stairs was slightly open, a cold draft seeping through the gap. "Who's there?" he whispered, but there was no reply. He climbed the stairs one creak at a time and pushed the door open. The attic was pitch black, save for the faint beam of his flashlight. In the center of the room stood an old wardrobe, its surface scratched as though by claws. A small, hollow-eyed doll lay near its base. Ben felt a chill crawl down his spine, but he stepped closer. "Don't open it." The voice came again, a shiver against his ear. He spun around, but the attic was empty. The air grew colder, heavy with an unnatural stillness. Ben couldn't move, as if invisible hands pulled him toward the wardrobe. His trembling fingers reached out, and just as they touched the door, it creaked open on its own. Inside was an ancient mirror, its surface dull with dust. Ben wiped it clean with his sleeve and peered into the glass. What stared back was not his reflection. The face was his, but wrong. Its eyes were black and hollow, dark liquid dripping from the corners of its mouth. The creature tilted its head, studying him, before slowly reaching out a hand through the glass. "You're mine now," it whispered as the mirror shattered, releasing a thick black mist that coiled around Ben like a living thing. The disappearance Emily and John woke to the sound of a scream. They ran upstairs, but the attic was empty. No wardrobe, no mirror, only the doll lying on the floor, its hollow eyes staring up at the ceiling. The police searched for Ben, but no trace of him was ever found. The Carters left the house within a week, unable to bear its presence. A year later, the house was sold to a new owner. He told neighbors that sometimes late at night, he heard footsteps pacing in the attic. But the strangest thing was this. On certain nights, if you looked up at the attic window, you could see the silhouette of a boy standing perfectly still, staring down at the street below.